we need to learn a lot about digital transformation. We are not well placed at all, unfortunately. 70% of transformations fail. We're at second bottom in terms of the digital maturity index. It's not about tools, it's not about processes, it's about the outcome that you want to deliver to your client base and working your way back to the most appropriate tool there, be it hybrid or be it SaaS delivered. So SaaS or cloud technologies, as they're often sold as, it's important to differentiate the difference between a tool that you might be purchasing to do a particular job and also the service outcome that you want for your clients, the experience that you want to give them. And that's the starting point, I think, rather than the tool that you select. Too often we select a tool based on the vendor's promise of, an outcome and try and match that to our business needs rather than starting from the endpoint, work your way back and select the appropriate tool from that point. This market's growing by 24% a year. It has been for quite some time, which means that whether you know it or not, your enterprise is expanding its platform of cloud or SaaS-based applications, not just in the amount of money that you're spending on that platform, but also on the number of platforms that you've got. So they're prolificating within your environment. Often you don't see them. Often they'll pop up in in HR or payroll or marketing or, one of the areas that's not traditionally owned by your IT department. And, they're not always put through the appropriate kind of selection process, and they may not always be the most appropriate way to consume that software as well. Whereas the fact is that as long as this tool's sold and you're paying your license agreement, the outcome's actually not promised in any shape at all. It's then very much up to you to deliver that outcome. So a hybrid environment's about choosing the best software, the legacy we call it, or the on-premise, kind of software, and the cloud or SaaS delivered software. Making sure that you're assessing the tools based on their merits rather than whether they're kind of the fashionable cloud delivered approach. Making sure that you remain flexible, making sure that you've got access to your data when you really need it. So local providers are all important in that they get to know you, they can kind of move into your offices and really understand your business. And they should be focused on the client experience, the service transformation that you want to go through, the client outcome that you want to provide, and then working their way backwards through the policies and processes, and ultimately the tool gets selected then, and be it a cloud tool or an on-prem tool, a hybrid environment is always going to deliver the best outcome. What I would recommend to boards is to make sure they do their DD. So make sure they look into the system that's been selected, make sure that they're not just selecting a tool because their competitors have selected it. Make sure that whoever's positioning that tool is really thinking about the service outcome, the service experience, and there's solid evidence to prove that service experience can be delivered. And also make sure that it's not just a straight through sell from that SaaS vendor's kind of playbook essentially. So make sure that there's good data points to say that the outcome can be achieved and that the proposal's focused on the outcome rather than the actual tool itself being sold. Secondly, I would recommend that they hold the partner's feet to the fire in terms of delivering the outcome. So make the engagement based on the company achieving the outcome, not the company consuming the software. And lastly, I would ask board members to think about in terms of selection, but it's also in terms of running the cloud-based platforms that they've got. How quickly can we get our hands on that data? If that cloud provider goes off the air tomorrow, how quickly can we stand up an equivalent solution or stand up a minimum viable solution? Or indeed, how quickly can we just lay our hands on the data? Do we have an accurate copy of the data? How old is it? All of these questions are rarely asked in my experience. They are perhaps of the biggest of the platforms that a company consumes, but often that might cover 40 or 50%, and the remaining volume of SaaS is really potentially not backed up, not in a disaster recoverable state, and should really be cause for concern.